And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brendan D. Thanks so much for tuning in today, everybody. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. You can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It would also be greatly appreciated. We're talking strictly Pittsburgh Steelers today on the podcast, and no one else to do it with than my friend, my coworker, Daniel Valente from theScore. Valente, how we doing?
Not bad. Thanks for having me, man. This is the Pennsylvania podcast now today, I guess.
Yeah. You're a big Steelers guy. Just to get it out there, you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. You cover everything at theScore, but I believe most of your kind of social media stuff is based off the Steelers. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk to. And I'm just going to throw in kind of a generic question to start. How has this year been for you? Have you been having fun as a Steelers fan? What has the 2022 season been like for Steelers fans, and I guess yourself?
It's definitely been different. I think that's the one word that I could probably use for people, who around my age or just probably Steelers fans in general, because for the last 20 years or so, no losing seasons, and they've always at least been competitive, somewhat in the playoff picture, no matter what. And this year coming in, the expectations were already low that it was going to be a kind of stepping stone year where we were going to try to gel these pieces together and see what happens. So it has been different, but there's also a bright side to that where it's a different taste where you can start now. You're looking more for potential and looking towards the future, and that's not always a bad thing. And I think over the last 4 weeks or so, the Steelers have given their fans, also some positive things to look for. If maybe not for this year, obviously, but for the future. And that's the one big word that everyone is dying over, future, where it's just like any little thing that a guy does now, it's like, well, this could be great, next year or in years to come. And that's also been kind of fun.
Okay, so I got to start with the quarterback position. Kenny Pickett's obviously kind of, when you bring up future, he is driving that bus. He is the key to kind of the Steelers' success over the next few years. Where are you at with Kenny Pickett right now? And do you believe he can be the quarterback of the future?
The thing with Pickett is, I think when he was first thrown into the mix, it was kind of he was thrown to the fire. He definitely didn't have the easiest slate of opponents, some very hard defenses, and we saw him struggle at times, and that's only normal. And then I think there was two chapters to the Kenny Pickett story so far, where there was the pre-bye and the after-bye, and after the bye week, it seems like he's definitely shown signs that there is something there worth watching and worth developing further. Whether it's just, for example, like one thing that really stands out is his ability to scramble. Now, he's always had that ability, but I think after the bye, instead of seeing him kind of resort to that whenever something breaks down, he still keeps his eyes downfield now, and he'll scramble and gain yardage if he has to, and if it's smart. It's not just the go-to, security blanket for him. I think his pocket awareness is also like improved after the bye, and the biggest thing is decision making. Hasn't thrown an interception. I think it's now 129 attempts, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing for the Steelers offense right now, and will be a useful tool going forward. Is just if they want to win and be competitive, don't give the opposition a short field and take advantage of all the points you can get. So I think like one area for him, I think that maybe in general the whole team needs to work on is just in the red zone. You still see those struggles where they get to the red zone and the field gets tighter, and he just hasn't been as efficient in the red zone. But other than that, I think after the bye week, there are definitely signs and building blocks that you can use for next year. And the thing with rookie quarterbacks is it's nice to see things in year one, but I think year two will be the big thing. When
Yep.
he has a full off season, he knows how to prepare. The team has all the training camp. They send them into the off season with, this is what we want you to work on. So I think next year will be the big step, but surely for year one, it could be worse.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of reminds me of Carson Wentz when he came to Philly in 2016 a little bit, the
Yeah.
rookie year. Lots of ups and downs in that year for Carson Wentz and the Eagles team in general. Some just Kenny Pickett stats throughout there. So he is 27th in e-paper player of all quarterbacks, which is not ideal. But if you take a look at since week 7, like you said, when after the bye week, I don't know if the bye week was in between that, but I just use the week 7 as a metric. He is 14th out of all quarterbacks. The Steelers offense is 13th in PA per play. So a lot of kind of progress over the last few weeks. to say the least, I guess, with him. And 13th in completion percentage, which I thought was also an interesting stat to throw out there. He's very accurate.
Yeah, and I think it's just a part of it too is just scheming the offense. I think that's another thing you've seen after the bye, scheming the offense to his strengths, and if even if it is easy throws, let's say if you want to call them that, it's just about building his confidence up and seeing where that can take you at this point.
Okay, I want to transition to another kind of hot topic in Steelerland, I guess, throughout the year has been the play of Deontay Johnson. He was signed to not huge money, but he was given a nice contract this offseason. Hasn't been very productive this year compared to seasons in the past. Where are you at with him, and do you think maybe it was a mistake to open up a checkbook to him?
It's definitely been kind of a step back from 2021 and the years prior where we've seen him kind of trend upwards, and this year has definitely been either like a plateau or maybe a minor step back. I don't think the contract was so much a mistake just because of there's so many moving parts in this offense that weren't clicking for whatever reason, and just without a quarterback on a huge contract, you have the ability to pay these guys, and they're not really tied down to him. It's another 2 years after this, I believe, and then it lines up perfectly with when his contract expires. George Pickens then is entering his final year of the rookie deal, and who knows, he may be that guy, and they let Deontay walk. But I think for the time being, it's kind of hard to say it was a mistake just because the running game wasn't clicking for so long. The quarterback play was inconsistent. He was, not being targeted in areas that you would usually see him targeted. And I think just his tandem with Ben Roethlisberger is a lot different than the one with Kenny Pickett or Trubisky. It's taken definitely a bit longer to build that. But that's not to say that it's been a disappointing year, because it has. There's the drops have kind of come back. There's a lot of times where we're used to seeing him make incredible yards after the catch plays, and this year for whatever reason, whether it's just he's trying to do too much, there's a lot of moving lateral instead of moving forward, which when you have the ball in space, that helps, but when teams are clued in that these are the only routes you're doing, it's kind of tougher. So I'm not really to knock him yet or call it a mistake, but I think it's just growing pains with a new offense, new quarterback, etc.
Let me throw something your way. I was looking at Pittsburgh Steelers cap space for this year, which we'll definitely get into their kind of offseason plan. If they were to trade him, it would only be a $6 million dead money cap hit after this year. Would you be willing to, look, we saw the wide receiver market this offseason. It was nuts. You had Tyreek Hill go for a bunch of draft picks. Marquise Brown went for a first-round pick. I think that's probably kind of the comparison you can make. What if a team offers you a late first-round pick for Deontay Johnson? Are you biting?
I don't know if I'm biting, but you're definitely listening. I don't think Deontay moves unless he wants to move, whatever reason that is, a trade request. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't feel like he's being utilized enough. But I think just with his age and, with the pieces in play that are all pretty young when it comes to skill position guys, I think he's a guy that you would hope to hang on to, even if it is just for the remainder of this little extension that he signed. So, my first inclination is wouldn't be to bite on a trade like that.
Speaking of wide receivers, your boy, George Pickens, who has been probably the most popular Pittsburgh Steeler this year around the media, makes some highlight reel catches. My co-host on this podcast is a Bears fan, and I've been bugging him all year about the fact that they didn't pick George Pickens at kind of the end of at the beginning, the second round. They went with Kyler Gordon instead. Thought it was a stupid move. Kyler Gordon could be a good player, but in general, I thought George Pickens, he was my fourth wide receiver ranked out of all the wide receivers in the draft process last year. Loved him. He's got that dog in him. You know those memes with the dog in the chest? He's got it, man. He's got it. I think he's one of my kind of favorite non-Eagle young players in the NFL. I'm assuming you probably have similar. He's one of your probably favorite players, if not your favorite player right now in the Steelers. What have you seen from Pickens so far this year, and what does the future look like for him?
He's just got it. I mean, there's no other way to really say it. It's just sometimes you put on the tape and you watch guys and you just know that there is a star building in them. And I think George Pickens is one of those guys. And we've seen it in big showings, and we've kind of seen it in flashes sometimes. But when you put on the Steelers game, he's usually good for at least 1 to 2 like crazy plays a game. And
Mhm.
I think that is just something to build on going forward. And, with him and Deontay, you could have potentially a good two-headed monster there where, one guy's more of the downfield contested catch guy and Deontay would be the more underneath and yards after the catch guy. So it's definitely been exciting to see George Pickens. And I think, for whatever reason, if you're a casual fan of the NFL and you just happen to tune into the Steelers game for whatever reason, like George Pickens is definitely probably that one guy you're watching just because he
Mhm.
is so exciting. He makes plays. And, I think his role with the Steelers, it was kind of almost, I think, what they wanted Chase Claypool to be, which is that, downfield contested catch guy. But for whatever reason, just Claypool wasn't consistent enough in doing that. And I think as George Pickens his stars started to grow, that's probably why they decided that, it's time to ship Claypool to Chicago. And, when you get that second round pick too, hard to turn down. But, it's been really exciting to see George Pickens grow um, throughout the year.
Do you think he's not targeted enough? Well, we're going to get into Matt Canada conversation, but is that kind of the main reason why the stats aren't there?
I mean, that's my biggest grip on Twitter right now. It's just that he's not targeted enough, But I think if a guy's making plays like that, if he's a playmaker, one of your best players on offense, you got to find a way to get the ball in his hand. And
Mhm.
if you're going to take these 50-50 shots, you might as well take it at the guy who's proved that he can come down with them. But we'll see what happens moving forward. He's definitely someone who I think should get the ball a lot more than just 5 targets in the last 2 weeks, especially when, anytime the ball goes to him, it seems like he's making some highlight reel catch or, doing something that's pretty special.
Okay, let's transition to Najee Harris, who I think has had a disappointing start to his NFL career. He wasn't a guy that I would really liked coming out of Alabama. He didn't have the traits for me. Of course, he dominated Alabama, was an unreal college football player, but his trajectory in the NFL has kind of matched what I thought was going to happen. But what are your thoughts on Najee Harris going forward? Are you confident him to kind of be the running back? Should they look elsewhere? Of course, they have Warren, who's a rookie, who's playing really well. What do you make of kind of the Steelers running back situation?
Um, I mean, Najee, can you improve at that position? Definitely. His play has definitely warranted that if an improvement were to come, I think you take it. Just because, he's a bell cow back, don't get me wrong, and that's something that this offense is needed, especially in this period of transition. But if you're looking for just efficiency, he just hasn't had it. We're at 2 years now, still hasn't cracked 4 yards of carry in total or in any of the years. But if his job is just to rack up carries and take the stress off other guys, sure. Now, is that something I would have spent a first round pick on? Definitely not. But I think he's serviceable. Does that mean that he's going to have his role tied to the Steelers offense and for the future and for a long time? I don't think so. But he definitely been one of the more questionable first round picks that I think they've used, but I think that's more just an organizational thing where they believe in a certain philosophy and they stuck to it and they took him in the first round because they felt they needed a bell cow back.
What was Steelers Nation reaction to when they took him? Did you guys like it?
From what I saw, I would say they were generally pleased just because I think it's just something that's just embedded in the fan base where they're just so used to having that bell cow guy, whether it's Le'Veon Bell, Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, like Franco Harris. It's just always been a part of that tradition, and the Steelers are very like old school franchise in some ways. So they
Definition.
look at the running game and they're just like they look at the how poor they've been and they're the solution is we need a bell cow guy, and it's worked in the past, but the offensive line is also a big equation in that. And we've seen since the bye week, the offensive line has started to open up more holes, and Najee is looking better and better. He's breaking tackles like he used to. But for me, and I'm sure a lot of other pundits and analysis would agree, a lot of that does come down to the offensive line. It's not solely tied to the running back, and you probably do not need to waste a first round pick on that kind of production.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Steelers' run game. They've been really interesting lately. I was digging up some stats. So they are 16th in offensive rush DVOA. So analytically, they're kind of middle of the pack. But they are 11th. The offensive line is 11th in adjusted yards runs. So they are opening up holes. 11th isn't like awesome, but it's better.
Yeah.
They're better than average in the run blocking game. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I think going back to Kenny Pickett, getting him a run game is going to be so important, and it
Yeah.
cures everything. Cures everything. Like look at if you just, I know I'm kind of comparing to Eagles teams again, but 2017 Wentz's second year, you know, like Garrett Blunt was a huge part of that offense. You had Jay Ajayi came in and was like during the deadline, it opened up holes, and it's just like a nice comparison because Kenny Pickett's going to be in the second year next year, and the run game is going to be massive. I would look at this. I don't know what because let's just jump into the Matt Canada conversation now. I'm assuming he's going to be fired after this year. What do you make of the offensive coordinator job he's done? I haven't looked. I haven't studied the Steelers' offense, but from watching it from like afar and like catching games on prime time and whatnot, I haven't done any film watch, like I said, but it's boring. The Steelers' offense
Uh,
is just not fun to watch.
Yeah, I think boring is probably the nicest way you can put what they've put on the field this year in terms of
Yeah.
play calling and stuff. But to give the guy some credit, same thing ever since the bye week. I don't know if that's just because more time to really install what works, what doesn't work. There have been more signs of life and more signs of improvement. Don't get me wrong, there's still more than a few hiccups or just where they hit major roadblocks and looks like they have no clue how to respond to them. Like the second half against the Bengals there's also a bit of a lull against the Colts, but I think it's as close as we've come to seeing a full 60-minute product from them. Does that mean it's still good enough to hold the job into next year? In my opinion, no. I mean, we'll see what the Steelers do because they have that same kind of thing, like I'm saying, where it's a continually and building, just sticking with the status quo. But again, to give the guy his credit, like this last game against the Ravens, they came away with 14. Was it 14 points? I believe they scored. Yeah, but the drives were there. Like if it wasn't for 3 picks, they were moving the ball down the field, and I think it had the potential to probably be their best overall performance if it wasn't for those interceptions, missed field goals, and stuff like that. So, there's definitely some signs of growth. Will that be enough to keep his job? I guess we'll see at the end of the year, but definitely been signs of growth there.
Sounds like you're leading the charge for Matt Canada 2023. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not leading the charge, but I'm willing to give some guy his fair due when he does show improvement instead of just bashing and bashing
No,
and
for sure.
bashing. But if there was no improvements, like I think before the bye week, those first 8 games was some of the worst Steelers football I think I've ever watched, and I feel like a lot of people, whether you're sitting in the press box, sitting at home, sitting in the stadium, can vouch for that.
What does the ideal offense look like for Pickett? Like, what would you install? Like, what do you want to see? Like, what is he not doing that you want to see? Like, again, I don't know much about the Steelers offense, so I'm looking for you here. Like, in my opinion, you should be getting him. I hate using the Kyle Shanahan offense because I think it's way
Yeah,
overblown. Like I think like 40% of the league now runs that kind of style or somewhat style offense like that. But Pickett on the move, man, getting him out of the pocket. I think he's a great thrower on the run. From what I've seen so far, he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world,
yeah.
so you kind of have to keep it into that 35, 40 yard range. Of course, if you step into a throw, you can throw farther than that, but I feel like with coordinators, and something that I like to do is look at the talent level. Are they playing above or below the talent level? And in my opinion, the Steelers offense should be better than it is right now. So I don't know what he's installed and what offense he's running, but what do you want from a Steelers offense, I guess is the question.
I think a lot of it is like what you're saying. It's got to be like, a quick up tempo passing game, get Pickett on the move. That's where he's most comfortable. If you're going to rely on him to just be a pocket passer there who you think is going to stretch the field, like that's just most likely not going to happen. He's not going to develop into that. He's never been that.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's just getting him comfortable into the quick passing game. I think you could also rely on a great running game. And I think what makes this equation so hard is just the offensive line at the end of the day. They've been decent in run protection, pass protection, as we've
Yeah.
seen. Like, it's been kind of iffy, and that's why he, left in the concussion protocol again for a second time. So it's all a big puzzle that is kind of hard to firmly pieced together just because of the offensive line equation. Now, James Daniel has been great. Mason Cole has probably also been better than expected. Okorafor on right tackle is serviceable. He does his job. I think just the big two holes are left tackle and Kevin Dotson there. I think those are the two big pieces that probably need to improve. And I think it's hard to say, if they're definitely playing below expectation, but without a solid offensive line in place, it's tough to really gauge like how much of it is because of that, how much is because of play calling. It's all a big piece of a pie there, and I think that's something that also can't be ignored.
Before we get over to the defense and some bigger picture Steelers questions, I just need to let you know today's episode is sponsored by True Classic. Guys, let's talk about t-shirts. Finding that perfect fitting shirt can be terrible. I swear the thing is either way too tight, has a case of a bacon neck, or just plain big and boxy. Luckily, True Classic wants to make every man look good and feel good. Tighter fit in the chest and sleeves to make your arms pop, and room in the torso to keep things cozy. I'm telling you, all of the styles are super soft and a great price for what you're getting. So, guys, no excuses. Get rid of those ratty t-shirts I know you've been hanging on to for years and get ready to upgrade. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on a certain body type. Think skinny models with six packs, but most of us aren't packing anything there but a few beers. And there's nothing wrong with that. My dudes, it's simple. You're wearing the wrong clothes. We have an exclusive deal for our listeners. We want to hook you up with some True Classic for a limited time only. Get 25% off with code DOINK at trueclassic.com. All right, let's transition over to the defensive side of the ball. I was actually surprised by some of the underlying numbers when I was researching on this Pittsburgh defense. I guess I might just have the AJ Brown game stuck in my head from what I did watch this season, but overall, not terrible. They're kind of middle of the pack on the defensive side of the ball on most metrics. 13th in defensive DVOA, 16th in EPA per play. So they've been about average. The problem is they had to have been better than average for them to have a successful season, right? You were hoping for that top 5, top 7 defense if they were going to have a shot at the playoffs. What's your kind of big picture takeaway from the defense so far this season?
They've just been bland, and I think that's the biggest word that describes them is just bland. TJ Watt missed time, that was huge. He's a huge part of that defense, and without him, that's a trickle down effect where his pressure leads to less turnovers, less third down stops, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think it's a combination of things. You look at the defensive line. I think they're still reeling from the retirement of Stephon Tuitt, who also didn't play last year, but it's just he's a tough guy to replace. And Alualu is a year older. Cam Hayward, he's still playing at a high level, but also a year older. And maybe you're starting to see like subtle signs of he's not going to be, or you can't rely on him to be the all pro that we've seen for years to come. You look at the linebacker level, and there's just been like no splash plays at all from the likes of like Miles Jack and Devin Bush. So even if they do their job well, there's just not enough splash plays or production there. Alex Highsmith has been one of the lone big bright spots this year, and he's kind of locked down his position. And then it's the same thing when you look at especially the cornerback unit, where Cam Sutton, he's doing well, he's doing great, but it's just it's a unit that lacks any real like fear of having a number one guy like Levi Wallace, Cam Sutton, Kelly Witherspoon, who's now injured. They acquired William Jackson, but it's just not who's also still not playing. It's just not a unit that has like a top dog, and not much has to be said about Minka in the secondary. He's great, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrell Edmonds is, more the same, whereas you know what you're going to get with him. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. It's somewhere in the middle of the pack, and that's why this defense is around the middle of the pack. So I think if when we move on to the 2023 offseason, that is definitely going to be another area of focus, is just getting more guys who can make impact plays, especially when it comes to the second level, when we're talking about the linebackers and the secondary, because it can't just be Minka out there trying to do it all himself or TJ.
Again, going back to the Eagles game, I thought the pass defense was really bad. I think you guys need some just like influx of youth maybe in that position, an influx of talent. And the secondary, Minka Fitzpatrick, he said, it's awesome, but only so much you can do with one kind of star safety, right? It kind of limits you as a whole. Okay, let's talk about Mike Tomlin. I think this is kind of an interesting topic of conversation. I'm assuming he's been the head coach of your were you around for the Bill Cowher days? Sorry.
I caught the last 4 years of Bill, I believe 3 or 4. Yeah.
So Mike Tomlin's been your guy. You grew up with him. You've gotten old with him. You know Mike Tomlin probably better than most people. Just him as a person, how he talks, what you like about him, what you don't like. Are you open to a coaching change? Do you want Tomlin back? Is he going to be back? Give me the Mike Tomlin experience, Valente. What do you think?
I think the fire Mike Tomlin narrative has been going around Twitter for as long as I can even remember being a fan.
Has it? Has it been going around? Like, is that a
Oh
thing?
my God, it's been a
I didn't know.
thing. If you go to like probably any of my replies, you'll see at least one or two. It's hilarious. But
Okay.
um, I don't think I'm open yet to a coaching change. I just think he's maybe not the most schematic guy when it comes to schematics, but when it comes to being a people mover and someone who can rally the troops and get guys to play at a level above of where they are, above their pay grade, he's definitely the guy for that. And I think with a young team that is still learning how to win, there's probably maybe only a handful, if even that, of men that I would want like leading this team going into the future. I don't think he's ready. I don't think the Steelers will move on from him. I think the only chance of a surprise new coach is if Tomlin decides to step away for whatever reason. But I am definitely not on the let's make a coaching change ship yet.
That's good. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think it would be a stupid decision to fire him.
The thing is, you get rid of him, but how do you know you're going to get someone better? You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
It's not always brighter on the next side,
Yeah.
right? I would, if I'm Steelers fans, I think that's insane for the fire Tomlin. I think he's like you said, he's one of the best Steelers men. I've listened to some interviews of old Steelers, like just talk about how they love him and he's a great guy in the locker room. I do think he needs better people around him. I do think there's probably going to be a shuffle and like coordinators and just those type of jobs, those type of roles, defensive back coaches, stuff like that, right? You need an influx of new ideas. And I think Tomlin, what he's best at is he's not a hard ass. Like he knows when to be mad. He knows he picks the spots right. He's not a screaming and yelling guy. And he's kind of in the middle, and you need to pick your spots when to get mad at people, when to yell at people, when to kind of push that. And I guess one last question for you. Well, I guess two more questions. One relates to the Steelers. What are you looking for this offseason? Because I think they're one of the most fascinating teams heading into this year. Because the division, like Ravens are like, who knows what's going on with Lamar Jackson? Who knows what's going on with Deshaun Watson, the Browns, right? Like who knows how that's going to all play out? The Bengals are going to be good for the next 5-7 years with they have Joe Burrow. The division's not open, in my opinion, but they can compete if next year if they kind of do the right thing, make the right moves. So I was just taking a look at some like their cap situation. They have $20.2 million set for 2023 in cap. Now they have a lot of guys they can move on from this offseason. Miles Jack is a guy they can get like $8 million out of. Cam Hayward has a big contract this year. They can either move on, restructure. Mitchell Trubisky's a guy that they can cut, save some money. You can restructure TJ Watt. You can restructure Minkah Fitzpatrick. There's options here. They've got draft picks. They've got it all. Like this is not a clean slate, but they have enough to work with in this offseason to become a competitive team in 2023. So my question is, what does the ideal offseason look like for you?
I think the ideal offseason for the Steelers is, like you're saying, if not the division, at least a playoff playoff spot should be up for grabs. Just even with the extra seed now and stuff, like there is no reason that this team should be playing 5-8 football at this time next year. So I think the biggest thing this team needs to look at for this offseason is probably looking back into the trenches, whether that's O-line, getting another body on the D-line. Just because they have the skill position on offense should be set for years to come. You got Pickett, who you hope to be is your franchise quarterback. Freiermuth, the tight end, who looks, also exceptional. Deontay, you have for a couple more years. Pickens is under a rookie deal. Najee's under a rookie deal. So that's in place, and I think it's unusual sometimes that you see a team build the skill position before the O-line. So I think now the Steelers kind of have to go back and correct in a way. And I think it's, similar to the last time this team was, in the Super Bowl picture, which was, last decade around 2008, 2010. After that, that's when they started using first round picks and, a lot of draft capital and O-line. And then we saw towards the middle of the decade, they had one of the best and most consistent O-lines in the NFL. So I think it'll probably be getting back to that. And I think if you made a first round investment at quarterback, you have to protect him. You can't have this guy getting in the concussion protocol 2 times a year, even if he might be more prone to that because he is a scrambler. And then when it comes to defense, the their typical thing to do is to restructure contracts, and the way they set it up, it doesn't really hurt them too much with the way the cap goes, where they will kick the can down, but they're definitely going to have some room to play with. Miles Jack, I probably don't envision him being back too. Devin Bush is a free agent, so linebacker will probably be another position that finally gets its much needed makeover, hopefully. Hopefully another cornerback too. There's a lot of holes on this team. Don't get me wrong, but there are the resources there to plug in those holes. And if they're wise, which the Steelers usually are not a team to splurge in free agency. It's more, cost effective measures. But there's no reason that this team shouldn't at least go into the season with the expectation to be fighting for a playoff spot next year.
Who are some guys that you're looking forward to, maybe like a second year of or third year of, like besides Pickett and Pickens, the obvious ones? There's some kind of under the radar dudes that you're kind of looking forward to seeing grow, I guess.
Well, I mean, Pat Freiermuth is a big one just because of how we've seen him come in from his rookie year to this year. There's a potential there to enter the conversation of being like a top 5 tight end in the league potentially.
Yeah.
On defense, I mean, DeMarvin Leal has kind of played in spurts. He got injured for a bit, but before that, he was racking up some playing time. So I think there's going to be a lot of guys on the D line, young guys who are going to have the opportunity. Isaiah Loudermilk is one. He hasn't been playing up to par recently, but another young guy who you're going to have to see what you got with these guys. And then the secondary, another one that's kind of come on as a surprise this year. In small sample size is James Pierre. He's always been a guy who doesn't get, maybe as a starter he might not hack it, but he does get his reps, and when he does, he performs well. So he's another guy who I'd like to keep an eye on, see where that goes. But I didn't want to say George Pickens. That was like too obvious,
Pickens and Pickett are definitely the obvious ones there.
Yeah.
It's a good it's not like those are two good guys to build around. Like I didn't say this at the beginning. I wanted to get this in. I don't mind Pickett. Like, he's growing on me a little bit. Kenny Pickett's growing on me. He's like, I think he's got a shot to be a top 10 quarterback in this league. Like, and he doesn't have the crazy traits, but he's got something, in my opinion. And I got into a big argument on my podcast, I think last week, with my co-host. We made a bet that Pickett's going to be a top 12 quarterback in this league at some point. And I'm on the right side.
Yeah, there's definitely the ceiling for it. Now, I just think, sometimes I think the traits narrative around draft, when it comes to draft discussion, kind of has gotten maybe a little overblown at this point, where, you do need more than traits at some point. We've seen a lot of guys with traits who just bust. Now, I think as long as you're realistic about Pickett's style of play, his age, because he also already is like 24, and his ceiling, you can still build an offense that is tailored to him and can work. It just involves getting the right people in the building, whether that's on the O-line, definitely a coordinator. Everybody has to be in sync, and I think this year just the biggest thing holding them back is there hasn't been that. They haven't been in sync, at least not until after the bye week.
Okay, let's finish it off here before we go. I want to talk about Mr. Valente. How did you become a Steelers fan?
Didn't really have a choice. Was born into it. I think
is your pops a Steelers fan?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I believe my first memory of football is just watching my dad be heartbroken when Tom Brady beat the Steelers in the 2004 championship game there in Ben's rookie year. So, and then ever since then, next year the Super Bowl, and I mean, not that I had a choice anyways, but it was a pretty good decision, I think.
Oh, for sure. It could be worse of a lot many teams in the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. And, they're always a fun team to follow, and they always got drama or something going along,
Yeah. Do you remember 2008?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I remember Super Bowl. I'm trying to think, because back then it was like, this is before the cell phone era. So I remember when Larry Fitzgerald took that one to the house and I thought it was over. I remember like getting on the house phone and having to call another buddy and like practically sobbing and be like, it's over.
Oh, no,
calling him back 2 minutes later and we're like going crazy. But yeah.
Fuck yeah, baby. It's funny, that year holds a special place in my heart. I loved that Eagles 08 team.
Yeah.
I was 13, I think. And Larry Fitzgerald absolutely ripped my heart out in the NFC Championship game. I think Larry Fitz went for 12 catches,
Yeah.
3 touchdowns, and 180 yards against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. And then he goes and he was awesome that whole run. That was one of the best wide receiver performances ever. But
the guy had
it's
Game
funny.
Breaker on or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because that year I always have this take, and I did a whole episode on the 08 Eagles this offseason with Ruben Frank from NBC Sports, who's covered the Eagles forever. We were talking about that 08 team. The Eagles beat the Steelers that year in the regular season. And I have this take, like, if they beat the Cardinals, they would have beat the Steelers. But
I mean, probably. Because
but,
they gave the Steelers an absolute ass whooping that year.
Yeah.
I remember that was the game where Ben Roethlisberger famously said he thought about retiring because that's how bad you guys put a whooping on him.
Mm-hmm. Is that your favorite Steelers team? What was your favorite team growing up? Like out of all the years?
Yeah, the old team definitely holds a special place in my heart just because of how great that defense was and how many, it was like you score more than 14 points. You felt confident you were going to win. There's also that was probably peak of clutch Ben Roethlisberger. He had so many game-winning drives that year. The Dallas one was also special. But another one that, they didn't really win anything after it was all said and done, but that 2017 team with, peak Killer Bees where it was Ben, AB, Le'Veon, Juju's rookie year.
Yeah, they had some fun offenses. Like they were in the middle of 2010s. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that was just 5 years ago, and now compared to the offense where Steelers fans are watching now.
But, it can come crashing down, man. The NFL's like that. But talking, you guys are into that spot though. Okay, last question. Just a little bit about you. So you are a football news editor at theScore, just like me. You've been awesome help to me since I started the job. You're a very talented writer, very talented dude. Have you always wanted to do this? Have you always wanted to be a football writer? What are your goals, I guess, in this business, and what does the future look like?
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to be this. I've always just been a huge sports nerd. Like while all the other kids were playing with toy cars or whatever, I was reading.
You were counting stats, baby.
Yeah, I literally was. It was just I forget what it was called. It was a book, a baseball book that was just filled with numbers. There were no words in this book. It was just every single player's stats, and I was just memorizing that as like a 7-8-year-old, But and then I always just loved writing, so I guess that's how I came here. I always loved the Steelers. I started previously at a place called Steelers Depot, which they're still around. They still do tremendous work, and I loved every second of being there before I ended up at theScore. And I hope to continue doing what I'm doing here at theScore, but hopefully, who knows what's to come. And I'm just looking to have fun and just keep enjoying myself. What we do, we're very lucky. So
it's funny. Quickly before you go, so you were born into being a Steelers fan. I don't know if you know this, but my dad's a direct Washington football team fan. It's the old Redskins. And see this little blank space here? That's all Washington memorabilia. I take it down for every podcast. I can't have Washington memorabilia. So I am lucky I didn't follow my dad's footsteps because being a Washington fan would have sucked my whole life.
Would have been a little rough,
yeah. So
I feel you can only go one of two ways. It's either you have to follow suit or you have to rebel super hard and go complete opposite direction.
Well, it's good you were a Steelers fan, not a Browns fan. That would have been a shitty life for you as well, right? So anyways, before we get out of here, man, thanks so much for doing this. You're very talented. You're very well-spoken man, really good at writing. So I want everyone to take a look at where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can find your work, plug everything in here.
Yep. So if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at StatsGuyDaniel. And then my work will be on theScore. You can download the mobile app or, go to thescore.com and everything else will be there.
Thanks so much for tuning. Thanks so much for jumping on, man. Really appreciate it. Some Eagles content coming later this week. Sheil Kapadia from The Ringer who will be joining me for Talking Chicago Eagles on Friday. Me and Eric will be back tomorrow with an episode if you're looking for some more generic NFL content. Make sure to check out our sponsors, True Classic and BetterHelp. Some great stuff for True Classic for Christmas. Make sure to jump on it. Perfect Christmas present. And we will talk to you later.